Hi, I'm Mark Rossano, founder and CEO of C6 Capital Holdings, coming to you from Primary Vision Network. So today we have our econ show, and there's a lot to talk about, but it's a little bit shorter just because we did a lot last week. So if you want to watch last week, then this one, you kind of get up to speed on everything that's happened over the last month and a half and what we expect to happen going forward. Now, for those that have been following us, we've been saying that the Black Sea deal was going to end poorly, and it did. So we want to talk in the first segment about the end of the Black Sea deal. What does that mean for food going forward? Now we also have India that is stopping the export of non-basmati rice. There's a lot of things that we really want to go through because the food side continues to worsen in a much bigger way, which is obviously going to impact things more as we go forward. Then we want to look at the Fed data, credit card problems that continue to kind of ramp up, and how that's going to put more pressure on the consumer as the Fed, is likely to raise rates later this week. Next week. And then, for those that have been following us, we've been saying that we expect 2 rate hikes remaining this year. And then we want to look at the consumer. So we're going to look at retail sales that just came out and really what to expect from the consumer going forward when you look at the consumer's base in terms of credit cards, again, just kind of rounding that out, looking at housing, some of the pressure points, as well as obviously the impacts that they're seeing at their spending level. Then we want to look at Europe. So some of the inflation was revised higher. We want to look at, what does that mean in terms of the inflation side? Where does that shake out on the wages front? Are we going to see some wage compression, which will obviously then slow activity even further? And then Chinese data. Chinese data missed estimates on many scales. And again, we see more pain coming. This is not the one-off. There's going to be additional write-downs, the additional movements lower. They keep talking about new ways of stimulating. But as we've been saying, they're going to struggle to continue to do that. So this is just looking at the Black Sea deal in general. So when you look at the importance of the Black Sea grain initiative and what does that mean and what the exports look like. So grain exports by Ukraine via the Black Sea grain initiative by destination. You have China, Spain, Turkey, Italy, pretty much parts of Europe, parts of Africa, as well as obviously Asia. And this was important. There were grain assets. A lot of this was in storage when you look at what was being kept on the coast. And now it's stuck. And Turkey had mentioned that they're going to help guide ships, but then Russia said if anything goes near the coast, they'll deem it as a delivery of weapons, and it'll be attacked. And NATO and Turkey being in NATO means that it would trigger the article and pull NATO into the war. So that's why we said from the beginning, Turkey may say it'll never happen. NATO wouldn't allow it. And if they did, they would say that they went rogue. That would be an interesting backdrop, but that's not something that was coming to pass. And then Ukraine ranks as the 3rd largest corn shipper, and this is during the war. So you're like from 2022 to 2023, despite the war, they were still the 3rd largest corn shipper. So you get an idea of still the amount of product that was able to come through there. And for those that have been following us, we said as Russia completely stopped doing their ship inspections. I'm like, look, they're not inspecting ships. This is going south. Then you had the Wagner uprising. Then you had the attack of several bridges and vital infrastructure on Russia. Then you had the push on the counter offensive. So based on those 3 things, I'm like, there's no way that Russia is going to allow this. They're going to pull this back and they're going to blame the West. They're going to do something, but this is going to be a way to get back at them. And what we've been saying from the beginning is this is going to be a huge hit. And this is going to be a bigger problem. You already had Nigeria, which issued a state of emergency. You have Morocco that's reopened wheat tenders. You continue to see this tightness in the market, and this is only going to make it worse. Now, with that being said, India is also doing something because India would disrupt the global rice market with far greater velocity than Ukraine did in the wheat market with the Russian invasion. When rice is a staple, and I thought, let me just preface this before I give the number. We've been saying from the beginning, when you look at meat, it's beef, pig, beef, pork, chicken, fish. Then you look at the food side, it's beans, corn, wheat, rice. Rice is a staple, and rice is a staple for more than 3 billion people. So you have to put that context in your mind when you're thinking about what do rice issues really show. So global prices are already hovering at their highest level in 11 years. And then the sudden ban on exports would be another painful level for buyers. Thailand and Vietnam don't have enough inventories to plug the shortfall. African buyers would be most affected by India's decision, which is why we continue to see a lot of these pressure points. So what does that mean? So India is the world's biggest rice exporter. They account for 40.5% of the world's rice exports, and the top destinations for Indian rice, as you can see in terms of Benin, China, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, or the Ivory Coast, Togo. India is the world's biggest rice exporter. Banned shipments of non-basmati white rice to maintain domestic prices at comfortable levels ahead of the general election. The nation accounts and domestic prices have increased more than 8% this year. And when you look at it on a year-over-year basis, they're up about 11.8%. So when you look at it in general, again, India is the largest producer, but what did they have? They had damages. Why did they have damages? They had damage due to the issue from this is from Karen Braun on Twitter. So top rice exporter, India has banned exports of non-basmati white rice after heavy monsoon rains damaged the crop. India accounts for 40% of the world's rice exports, and most of its non-basmati. Top buyers are Africa, Middle East, and other Asian nations. So again, we are seeing this cataclysmic impact, but it's not all at once. It's been accumulating and building, and this is why we've been so concerned when we talk about food. The U.S. Drought Monitor, the U.S. Midwest remains abnormally dry, but drought coverage retreated a bit to 54% this week from 64% in the last week. The recent high was 65% on June 27th, and then the severe drought fell to 19% from 26% when you look at the different levels on D1, D2. So expect improvements weren't seen last week, but this week. So there is a bit more of an expectation. But when you start looking at the issues that we have in the U.S. and now when you also look at Canada, because there's now way more wildfires and forest fires that are hitting the western side of Canada. Everything is super dry. You're not getting the levels. You're not getting what was expected. And that's, again, creating a bigger problem. And it's something that is just building off of the issues that we've already seen. And again, we don't see that changing. Now, some things that have shifted: the Polar Silk Road, the 4 major transatlantic maritime routes opening up by the Arctic ice melting. You get an idea of some of the distances that can be moved. Russia has been using this to move Yamal LNG a bit easier and cheaper into the market. But you get an idea of some of the pivots that are going to continue to happen. Russia actually just sent some crude through this path. So you get an idea of, it provides another avenue of movement, which is why it's very interesting when you start looking at Norway, Sweden, Finland, and them becoming part of NATO would then essentially you put a NATO entity on both sides of that, which is not something that Russia would desire at this point. So now when you start looking at the U.S., and we've always heard all these different things about the U.S., the U.S. dollar, the U.S. this. U.S. investment has outstripped China's in recent years. So the annual FDI, foreign direct investment, flows into ASEAN member states. When you look at what has happened, we continue to increase it. And again, we're increasing investment. So if you're a nation that is taking money from another nation, are you going to try to replace their currency? Total bond inflows into the U.S. have been rising as people and entities have been buying more treasuries. Why are they buying more treasuries? Rates have gone up. It's still a amount of relative safety, and it delivers this thing called U.S. dollars in interest, which a lot of these countries would like to have more of, not less of. Even though you have these commentaries coming from the populace, which I don't think truly understand the dollar's dominance, especially when you look at emerging markets, which are increasingly dependent on U.S. demand. So again, if you need U.S. demand and you need U.S. you need the U.S. to import stuff from you, are you going to be more or less likely to have U.S. dollars? Again, this is all the reason, just more reasons why the dollar isn't going anywhere. I've had this conversation multiple times. I wish I charged people every time I defended the dollar, because if I did, I'd already have my third fund fully funded and closed and not still working on the first one. Because again, all of the data, and again, we try to work with data, we stay with the data, it all supports just the dollar continuing to remain in its current status. So that's what we have for you on the global side, the food side. In the next segment, we're going to go deeper into the U.S. and what is happening on some of these different fronts and expectations from the Fed.